Hi, everyone. It's marriage and family therapist, Dr. Becky Whetstone. And today I am going to complete the conversation about why couples fight. This is part 2, okay? But this is more than about why couples fight. This is really about why all of us have communication problems every day, no matter where we are, in the workplace, with friends, with biological family. So this model applies to all of that, and it should help you see what's going on and know what to do about it. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right in. Of course, once again, using my stylus and my trusty Microsoft whiteboard. Am I getting paid by Microsoft to promote this in my videos? No, I just am telling you in case you like this app that I'm using, you might want to get it for yourself. Okay, so here we go. We enter the world and nothing has happened to us yet, hopefully, that has caused us any emotional damage whatsoever, okay? Unless you had a traumatic birth or something like that. You're probably coming out all wired and good to go. Okay, and so there you are, and then very, very soon into our life, we are handed over to influencers, okay? And the influencers in our life are, of course, our caretakers and education system. For many of my clients, religion plays a huge part in influencing them. The media, whatever culture they're brought up in, friends, and basically anything in life that influences you when you're growing up. Anything and anyone, okay? And so pretty soon, the child is saying to themselves, you know what? Everybody wants me to conform to being this certain kind of person. My parents want me to be a certain kind of person. Education wants, good grades and excellence. Religion wants me to behave in a certain way. And it just goes on and on and on. And so pretty soon, the child says to itself, I can't do all these things that are expected of me. I'm not good enough. And it's when the child decides I'm not good enough that everything changes. Okay, that is what we call toxic shame. And it is the most painful human emotion. Toxic shame, the idea that I'm defective, I don't belong, I am not good enough, I don't fit in, and all of the things that go along with that kind of thing. So right as soon as we take on that toxic shame, we sort of attain this inner bully that starts talking to us, and saying, Becky, you didn't do good enough in that math. The other kids in school are better than you. And so that negative voice in our head starts talking to us, reminding us all the ways that we fall short in life. Okay. And so that's how toxic shame starts playing a role in our life. But pretty soon you're going to see how it plays a role in your relationship. So I'm going to explain that next. So even if you had a great family when you were a kid, you really think you were raised very well with lots of love and attention and all the things that kids need to thrive, you still most likely took on toxic shame. All it takes is for you to compare yourself to someone else who you feel is better than you at whatever it is. And you're going to have that feeling of toxic shame in your body. It hurts. It hurts. And then, of course, what we human beings do on the side, and this is a whole nother video, is we start compensating for not being good enough. We might become perfectionists. We might become overachievers. We might become caretakers. We might become pleasers. We make all these sort of compensations to try and present ourselves as someone worthy to be out there in the world. But the thing is, we think that our worth is dependent on if we're making everyone happy, or if we're caretaking or taking care of someone, or if we're overachieving, or if we're being a perfection. So like anytime when your well-being depends on some sort of external thing being true, that's not healthy self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem comes from within yourself. This solid feeling of knowing that, hey, human beings are imperfect. All of us are. No one can be perfect. And I'm weird. I'm quirky. I'm my own, concoction. And I'm okay with myself. I value myself as a human being, even though I have all these flaws and make mistakes. And so, most of the people that I work with, they're not there. They're not in that place. They're making their, whether or not they're having a good day or a good week or a good life, dependent on certain external things being true. So if you've got that going on, that is something that you're going to need to be working with a really good trauma therapist. Okay, so when you take on that toxic shame, the wounded child part of you appears. And the wounded child part of you is less than 5 years old. Why do we know this? Because before you're 5 years old, the limbic part of your brain is your operating system, okay? And the limbic part of the brain is all about survival. So children under 5, they're all about trying to survive, So when they're hungry and they start screaming, they feel that it's a life threat. If I don't get my bottle, I'm going to die. Or if they're cold and they're crying, it's like, well, if I don't get warm, I'm going to die. To them, their brain is constantly telling them, you're in danger and you might die. Okay, so this part of us still being with us is going to play out in our relationships in the future. Later on, when we become an older child, we have this other part of our personality that's called the AC, adapted child. Okay, this is about a 14-year-old child, right? 14-year-old child. And so we all know how 14-year-old kids are, like, right? Most of them are sassy, you can't tell them anything, they think they know everything. All those qualities of this 14-year-old are exactly what this part of the personality is all about. And then over here, we have our healthy self, really the only part of our personality that we really need. And that's the healthy, functional adult. Okay, how does this play out when you're in a relationship with somebody? And this could be you're talking to anybody, right? Okay, so let's say that, and I'll use the example I used in the last video, which is I go to my husband and I say, gee, you've been napping a lot, okay? And so the thing is I don't mean any harm by that. I don't mean it as a criticism. I'm just sort of making an observation, right? But because most of us human beings have toxic shame stored up from our childhood, when someone says something to us that they perceive as a negative comment, a criticism, or whatever, then their limbic part of their brain is going to fire. They're going to feel an extreme emotion in their body, okay? And that is an indicator that the wounded child is going on alert, and your brain is telling you, I'm under threat, I'm under threat, I'm under threat. So in this scenario, I'm saying to my husband, gee, you've been napping a lot, and he gets activated. His wounded child wakes up and has got a fire alarm going inside saying, I'm in danger, I'm in danger, I'm under threat, okay? So what does he do next? Well, if he's like most of my clients, what he does next is he allows his AC to be the responder to the emotional attack that he felt he was under attack. So the 14-year-old is going to be his defender, okay? And the 14-year-old is the part of us that goes into fight, flight, and freeze, okay? Okay, so he's going to go into fight, flight, or freeze. And knowing my husband, what he's probably going to do is go into fight and say something snarky to me. He's going to say something like, well, you napped last week for 2 hours. He's going to throw something back at me. And, you know, and so there we are. And if I bite that hook and we start going back and forth and it starts escalating, then the next thing you know, we're off to the races and we're having a big old fight. But of course, I'm not going to let that happen. Why? Because when he says, well, last week you took a 2-hour nap, I'm not going to be defensive. I'm not going to let my 14-year-old respond to that, right? I am going to make my healthy, functional adult be the responder to that. And I might respond and say something like, yes, I took a nap last week. There's nothing wrong with naps. And I hope that you know that when I observed that you were taking a lot of naps lately, that I meant nothing by it. You know, hope you enjoyed your naps. It's going to be over right there. Okay. But normally when somebody says, well, you took a 2-hour nap last week, then the person right here gets activated too. Now we've got two people whose pulse rate's going up, whose limbic part of their brain survival thread is all fired up. And so then they start defending themselves through the fight or flee response. And so I'm asking couples, okay, that when your wounded child gets ignited and activated, which is the word I'm using, like you're sitting there in the chair reading a book, your spouse or partner says something to you, you get activated, okay? Activated, fire alarm going off, right? Then the voice in my head is going to say, knock his block off, Becky. Don't let him get away with saying that thing to you. But I'm not going to let that part. I'm not going to let my 14-year-old have a say in my life anymore. I've had plenty of that. So now I'm just going to wait a couple of seconds and will myself over to the healthy adult, and I am going to respond to whatever my husband said to me as a mature adult. It makes all the difference in the world, okay? All the difference in the world. All right, so understand, you're gonna get activated when someone hits one of your old trauma wounds, one of your I'm not good enough wounds, okay? And you can have other kinds of pain or emotional attacks other than toxic shame, but toxic shame is the most common one. You know, your boss criticizes the job that you did on a project, you're going to feel activated inside. Now, most people can suppress themselves with a boss and they don't talk back to them, right? And but in marriage and in biological family relationships, we're less likely to hold our tongue. And so if you have held your tongue in certain instances when you were activated, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In holding your fire and allowing your healthy, functional adult to be the responder to the activation that you're feeling in your body. Pia Mellody, who figured this model out back in the 1970s and 80s, she says if people who get activated can control their response 50% of the time, meaning that they're passing by the 14-year-old responder and allowing their functional adult to be the responder, then they are deemed to be in recovery from childhood developmental trauma or codependence, as she puts it. So this sort of thing is extremely life-changing, okay? And so what I tell my couples is like, say my husband comes in an hour or two and says something to me and I feel that I'm getting activated in my body. I'm going to turn to him and I'm going to say, you know what? What you just said to me a minute ago, I felt activated. I'm just going to let him know. And if it's happening in the now, say we're in the car and he says something that I thought was snarky and I feel the activation in my body, then I'm going to get a hold of myself there for just a second. And then I'm going to respond to whatever he said as an adult. Okay. This is what I want y'all to start doing. This will change your life. And I am not kidding. So there's so much more. There's so much more to know about childhood developmental trauma and what to do when you're in a fight with somebody that you care about or maybe even don't care about. And it's all in self-control. It's all in holding your tongue, okay? And then whatever you say out of your functional adult has to be diplomatic, okay? It really boils down to sort of like following the golden rule, treating people as you would want to be treated. I'm sure you don't like when people are being snarky to you, and so maybe it's a good idea if you stop being snarky yourself. I think it's a good plan. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and we've all got to get along here, okay? So it's best to control yourself. So this is about restraint, okay? All right, so I hope that this was helpful to you. I do plan to put up more videos in the very near future. Please keep watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about this. Don't forget to subscribe and to like this video so that we can keep making them for you. Thank you so much.